There's a couple of other things that are out there, and I haven't got a lot of time, so I'm hitting you with some hard stuff, right? The other thing is, if we design things really, really well, and I mean really well, right, we can produce this. Now, careful, I have to use my words very carefully because we're on film as well, right? We can produce the same amount of nutrition. I didn't say food. I said nutrition. There's a very big difference between what we call food today and what should be called nutrition, right? We can produce the same amount of nutrition on 2 to 4% of the equivalent area. I didn't say the same area, I said the equivalent area used by agriculture globally. I don't mean 2%, 2 to 4% of the agricultural land. I said 2 to 4% of the equivalent area of agricultural land. And I didn't say food, I said nutrition. Now there's a big difference. In the Middle Ages, most of you look quite European, I think, or mostly somewhat European in genetics. In the Middle Ages, in your European vegetable garden, your ancestors had 4 bitter vegetables you would not eat today. Eric Tosmeyer grows all 4 of them, one of them skirret and things like that. In that period, since the Middle Ages, we have the potential now to diversify our food, our productive crops 800 times in diversity. That's a huge amount. That's massive in that period of time. That's because we've shared species from all the continents and we're still sharing. I'm about to have a meeting next stop in Arizona with Joseph Simcox, the botanical explorer who's going around the world saving some of the last crop origins, because we need them. We definitely need them. There's still plenty out there to pull in. So this great diversity. Now, how do you do that? This leads me to the subject they asked me to talk about. I've eventually got there, right? And that is, what do you do about an urban area? What do you do about urbanization? What do you do about, well, actually, the problem is the solution. If you want to do that on 2 to 4% of the equivalent area agriculture uses and create the same amount of nutrition, you have to do urban and perimeter urban agriculture. On the outside of the perimeter urban agriculture, you need to do your rangeland and forestry. Rangeland and forestry fit together very well. Crops need ecosystem interaction, and you need to pay a lot of attention to the areas used by traditional people that didn't have scientific and industrial backup. So just to cut it really simply, the 3 basic climates of the world, if you go to the deserts and look at traditional systems, you'll see there are sustainable systems, not many. There's only about 7 in the whole world that have ever been documented. Sustainable human supply systems. The deserts have 1/4 to half-acre gardens in a polycultural food forest system, a diverse forest interaction in a very small area, because it's an extremely easily damaged and very easily stressed system with massive amounts of evaporation and very small amounts of rainfall. That's what makes a desert, evaporation over rainfall. In the tropics, where this capybara was, right, largest rodent in the world that was just going past in the Amazon. In the tropics, they're all 2-acre clearings. The largest crop fields are 2 acres. Doesn't matter whether it's the Indonesian archipelago, the Congo, or the Amazon, all the way around the center, within 10 degrees of the equator, nobody ever gardened a crop field bigger than 2 acres. Outside of that was the ecosystem, and that replenished it with a rest period, and there was set rest periods. Now, if you go to the temperate zones, which we are here, you have larger potential crop fields, and there were only maximum 4 to 5 acre fields. Outside of that, and often smaller than that actually, there was some sort of diverse perennial plant ecosystem that subsidized and supported that crop production. There was an edge interaction. It's the edge to area interaction that gave us stability. So when you're putting a perimeter urban agriculture around a population, you need to take that into consideration. But the thing with urban is, in urban, you have so many micro spaces, you have so much microclimate, you have so many sun angles, you have so many shade angles, because in some climates you need a shade angle. You have so much thermal mass heat gain that you have an extended microclimate potential. You also have wind tunneling and wind shelter. One's good, one's bad, depending which climate you're in. That you can almost get away with murder inside, as far as production is concerned, inside suburbs if they're well designed. If you look at Village Homes Davis in California, which is 39 years old, we documented it last year, it's just quite incredible that that model hasn't been extended globally. It's 39 years old this year. It was literally designed on water harvesting swales, and on a flat landscape, flat-ish. I mean, no one's perfectly flat. It's got a slight fall, and water harvesting patterns first, then access, and then structures facing the right solar aspect for passive solar building construction. At 39 years old, it is a food forest suburb, and I have never tasted so much good fruit in my life. Frank got me to eat a lot of fruit off trees, and every single one was some of the most perfect fruit I've ever tasted, and that never happens. You always get a dud now and again, and got to smile when you eat it, right, in front of the camera. But that's the byproduct of the runoff from the suburb, the roads, the houses, the water tanks and everything going to feed the water harvesting swale system and taking those roots down to those deep mineral layers. But the other interesting story we heard in Davis was Davis had a flood a few years ago, a foot deep right through the whole town. They didn't have anything they could do. They were sort of in a panic because there was no flood system preparedness. And so they just had a brainstorm of an idea and said, why don't we open the stormwater into Village Homes? And Village Homes sucked the town dry with its swales. It drew the water into the suburb. And that's just one little 70-acre suburb in the middle of the town. So if the whole town was like that, it would never flood or run out of food, you know, or be short of employment if you had a little bit of an imagination. And yet that system has not been extended. It was actually lobbied against by the Real Estate Commission because although houses are a little bit more expensive there, nobody wants to leave, so nobody wants to sell, so the turnover is extreme.